Welcome back to All About the Sound and the continuation of Chapter 3, Phonemic Awareness. Phonemic awareness, remember, is all about the sound and not so much what we are seeing. If we're seeing anything in phonemic awareness, it will be something called the phonetic symbols from the International Phonetic Alphabet. It will be the only alphabet that we're using, not the alphabet that allows us to visually read something. It's all about what we're hearing and how we pronounce our words. So for this next little section, we are going to move on from vowel sounds to consonant sounds. Remember, the basic unit of sound in any word is the phoneme. So we had said there is over 44 phonemes in the English language and possibly even 48. And 22 of those sounds are vowel sounds. Possibly, they're what I'm hearing, not necessarily what others would agree upon. And possibly 26 consonant sounds. So let's move on a little bit to understand more about it's all about the sound. So when we're talking about consonants, it's important to know that consonants make different sounds than vowels do. They require different movements of our speech muscles. We didn't discuss it a lot in the last presentation, but vowel phonemes require focus on the rounding of the mouth, whether or not the mouth is closed when we're saying a letter, closed midway, open midway, or open all the way. And it's also on where the tongue is placed in the mouth. Is it placed near the front of the mouth? Some movements require that the tongue actually be touching the back of the teeth. Is it central, more on the palate? Or is it back towards the uvula, that little punching peg in the top of your throat? Where is the tongue placed? How round is the mouth is how we determine what vowel sounds we are making and how to make them. So what you see here is the vowel chart on the IPA chart, and we will see that down this way we have close, close mid, and open, and that's referring to how open the mouth is. Not necessarily the lips, but the teeth. So watch the teeth more so than the lips when we talk about how open the mouth is. And then the front, central, back on top is referred to the position of the tongue. Is it front, central, or back? So that's what we're seeing when we look at that vowel chart. And let's just look at the first few of them. Not all those phonemes will be used in Canadian English. The I will and the Y will be, and that's the E sound. So when we have the I and the Y together in Canadian English phonetic symbol, we will have the E, a double E sound. We will not use the I and the U with the slash across them under central. We will not use that upside down M. That U looking symbol in the back we shall use in a Canadian symbol. The large I underneath in close and front section refers to the short I, as in I. We will use that horseshoe U. We will use the E close to close mid, that the E looking symbol. Again, these are not letters, these are phonetic symbols. We will also use, when we go under central, that we'll use that for a consonant, but we won't use it for a vowel. We're going to go all the way down to the end, to the O symbol. We'll see the schwa E, upside down E there. We'll use that one. We'll use that sed-like characters, both the one facing, I'm trying to get this facing this way and facing that way. We will not use that OE looking symbol, and we will use when we get to along the open midline, we will use that upside down V, which is our short U sound, and then we'll see the C, which usually refers to our controlled vowel, and we'll get in more detail than that. We'll use that A-E merger a lot. That's our short A sound, A. We may use that upside down A, but more likely we're to use in the open section the upside right A, and the 2 on the end in the back section. So those are the phonemes we'll use for our vowels, and it all has to do with how open the mouth is, namely the jaws, and the teeth. Don't worry about so much about the lips, and where the tongue is placed.
So as you can see, when you get your IPA chart, and I do hope by now you have it downloaded, I strongly recommend that you get that done. It should look something like this when you get it downloaded. And you'll see on the top of the chart, it has the pulmonic consonants. Below it has the non-pulmonic consonants. Over here, it has all the vowel sounds. And then you see something over here under other symbols. And these are what some other consonant sounds that you would hear. You have a W, upside down W, and a W on this one, and these are the ones we're mindful of. Remember that all the phonemes we've seen on this chart are not just for English, they're for any language. So we are picking and selecting from these. I am giving you more phonemes than many people would, just in case you hear them, because of the mixture of dialects you will see in Canada. So as you can see, there's many descriptors. When I say there's many different articulations for the consonant phonemes, there's many different articulations named or descriptors named for those movements on here. And it's all about how we use our vocal muscles and how to pronounce those words. You'll see things like bilabial, labial-dental, and dental, referring to bilabial, both lips are involved, dental, or the teeth are involved in the sound. Labial-dental, it's the teeth and the lips. The alveolar, there's an alveolar ridge on the top of your mouth that this is referring to. Are we using it? It's just the alveolar ridge, or is it post-alveolar? Is it behind the alveolar ridge? The palatal, meaning referring to the palate. Velar and uvular, we have in the back of our throat that thing that looks like a little punching bag. Well, that we're referring to that. How do we use that for these consonant sounds? The pharyngeal, if you see that word, it simply means the throat. And glottal is referring to the tongue. Down here, we see different types. So this is the placement of the tongue and the movement along the mouth, or how we're using the mouth. And these are the types of sounds that we're making when we come down here. Like when I say a plosive sound, or is it like it's just coming out? Is it a nasal sound going through the nose? Basically, mouth is closed, we're hearing it more in the nose. Is it a trill sound, leaving a bit of a shrill noise to it? Is it a tap or a flapping sound? Is it a fricative sound? Fricative meaning that we're creating a little bit of friction. So if I said the letter to you, the phoneme, you hear that like that snake, like it's a bit of friction there. And then we have lactal fricative, I don't care if you know that one, approximant and lateral approximant. So lateral means to the side. How much to the side are we making those noises? So again, most of the things we'll see will belong to the first part of your IPA chart, but I strongly recommend that you will download this. So you will not need to know all those descriptions or movements. I'm just sharing them with you for interest's sake. Just know that the thing I want you to know about this chart and about consonant sounds, is that they can be pulmonic or non-pulmonic. A pulmonic consonant sound means that we're using the air from the lungs to make the sound, okay? A non-pulmonic consonant sound is that we do not need the air from the lungs. Now, in English, mostly all the sounds will be found on this pulmonic part of the chart. Most English phonemes are pulmonic. We need the air to make them. English is said to be a very breathy language, okay? So we will need them. So if you're looking at this chart, and I'll show you in a minute, we're not going to be using all of these these phonemes. We are selected as the ones I had highlighted here. I've also added two more, which is a combination of two of those phonemes to make one phoneme. We don't have anything in the non-pulmonic. And down here, when you get to your chart, you'll see there's a W, an upside down W followed by a W. They may also be English phonemes. And again, these are my idea of what we're hearing in English. Others, with much more expertise, may differ. And by all means, check out your resources and question, question, question. Don't just listen to what I have to say and take it completely as reality when other people have other opinions when it comes to the number of phonemes we use in Canadian English. The other thing I wanted you to know is that some can be voiced, some consonant sounds can be voiced, some can be voiceless.
A voiced or voiceless consonant sound. Again, we're focusing on the sound, not the actual letters, right? A voiced consonant sound relies on vibrations from the vocal cords, and a voiceless one doesn't. Try putting your hand gently over where the Adam's apple would be in a male. So just come right down. You can just feel a little lump here. Just gently place your hand on it. And as you voice certain consonant sounds, you're just trying to determine if you're feeling the vibration or movement of the hand. When you do feel the vibration and movement of the hand, you are listening to or sounding out a voiced consonant. If there is no movement, then the consonant sound we're making is voiceless. I want to reiterate that there are 26 possible consonant sounds heard in Canadian English, and I stress the possible. Again, these are sounds that I am picking up from where I live. Remember that dialects differ from area to area, not just from country to country. In Atlantic Canada, as in all areas of Canada, we find many different ethnic groups with many different linguistic possibilities. So where I come from in Atlantic Canada, the area was settled by the Mi'kmaq and Maliseet nations long before English settlers ever entered the country. So we still hear a lot of those sounds, and they have become a part of Canadian English. The Mi'kmaq language is somehow infiltrated into every language that you hear in Atlantic Canada, and there's many other Indigenous nations throughout the country which will have an impact on the English spoken in certain areas. So be mindful of that. We also have Celtic roots and Gaelic roots that have different use of, say, the glottal stop or other phonemes that may be heard here and not heard elsewhere in the country. So just be mindful that every dialect will be slightly different from one area to the next. That doesn't make a significant difference in your learning of English or Canadian English. In fact, learning Canadian English is not all that different from learning any English you hear. I'm just trying to get you to be aware of the different sounds you will be picking up, not only in this country, but in different parts of this country, so that you can still be able to communicate effectively regardless of the different dialects that you're hearing. I'm hoping that makes sense. So as we're looking at this pulmonic consonant chart from the International Phonetic Alphabet, this is just one section of that download that I referred you to. On that download, we also had the consonants that are non-pulmonic, and we had something called other symbols, okay? Most of the sounds, phonemes we hear in Canadian English will be on this chart. We'll also include a combination of sounds for the T and the what looks like a long snaky S sound to make the ch sound And we'll also see the D with the backwards cursive said combined together to make the j sound that we'll hear in words like judge. But these are not to be seen on the IPA chart when we combine those two sounds together. They're called digraphs, and we'll talk about them later on, but you will not find them on the chart. The other two sounds we will not see from this chart are the upside down W and the W. They look like an upside down W, and one looks like a W. These make the W sounds, but you will find those if you look down on the chart I asked you to download to something called other symbols, and you will find them there. So remember that the IPA is meant for many different languages other than English. These symbols are not the Latin alphabet, though they may resemble the symbols used in the alphabet, the Latin alphabet. They are not the alphabet. These are all regarding to how we sound out our words, not how we write them. So in each section, you will see that there's several different movements and descriptors of movements of where we place our tongue, how we make our noises. These are said to be harmonic because we need the air from the lungs to make these sounds. English is a very breathy language. We need the air from the lung to make these sounds. You will see on the top section of this International Phonetic Alphabet Consonant chart things like bilabial, meaning two lips, labiodental, meaning lips and teeth, dental, meaning I have my tongue against the teeth possibly, or I'm using my teeth, alveolar, referring to the alveolar ridge, which is at the top of your mouth, post-alveolar, means after the alveolar ridge. Retroflex means flexion that occurs after the fact. Palatal, meaning I'm using the palate of my mouth. Velar and uvular, referring to the uvula at the back of the throat that looks like the little punching bag. Pharyngeal, meaning throat movements. Glottal, meaning tongue movements. If we go down the other end of the chart, like going down from row to row, you will see plosive, how fast the sound comes out. Nasal, referring to the nose. Is there a trill to that sound? Is there a tap or a flap? Is it fricative? Are we hearing some type of friction as we would hear in the sound, for example? Is it lateral frictive? Is it frictive on the side? Is it approximate? Is it lateral approximant? So these are all descriptors for the articulations needed to make the consonant sounds. We don't see this many descriptors in our vowel sounds, so it can get confusing. You do not need to know this for me. If you want to go further on into pronunciation and phonetics, by all means, do whatever you can to learn this. But this is just to give you a basic guide on how to pronounce our consonant sounds, okay? I would much rather you go to the IPA site, listen to those sounds, than to listen to my pronunciation, okay? I definitely have a certain dialect in my words, which the IPA pronunciation sounds would be free of, so you'd probably get a better idea. I'm definitely going to help you to some degree, but I just want you to be mindful that I am not a linguistics expert, nor am I a speech pathologist, so for pronunciation I am limited in what I can give you. So looking at this chart then, which phonemes out of the many phonemes we see for other languages are we using? If we go to the first column under bilabal, we use the P and the B sound that look like a P and a B. We move over to the dental alveolar and post-alveolar section. We will use those two symbols underneath it that look like a T and a lowercase d. We will move to the palatal section and use the C. We will move to the velar section and use the K and the G, what look like K and G. And again, these are not the letters of the alphabet, even though they look identical to the letters of the alphabet. These are the phonetic symbols we're using for this section of our learning. We will go under the uvular and use the Q. And we will go to that last one under glottal and use what looks like a funny question mark. Okay. In the nasal section, we will go under the bilabal and use that M sound. That looks like an M. It's an sound. We will go to that N-looking character under the dental alveolar and post-alveolar section. We will also go under the velar section to that funny-looking N that has a little hook pointing towards the middle. That is another one of our symbols we will be using. Under the trill section, we'll be going to the R under dental alveolar and post-alveolar. It's the only symbol we use there. In the tap or flat section, there is none that we use. We do use some fricative phonemes, and you might see we'll go to the F and the V under the labiodental. They look like F's and V's, lowercase, and it's V and V. Then we'll go under the dental and we'll use both those two symbols. One looks like an oval with a slash across. One looks like a little circle with a thing on top of it. We'll use those sounds. We'll use what look like the S and the Z sounds. We'll go under the post-alveolar and use both those sounds. One looks like a long snake and the other one looks like a funny looking Z cursive. The other things we may use in that column is under the glottal, the one that looks like a lowercase h. We'll use nothing under the lateral fricative, nothing under the approximant, and we'll use the L under the lateral approximant that looks like that lowercase l. So those are the symbols we'll be using when we talk about the English phonemes. We'll also be using, like I said, a combination of the T sound that looks like a T under the alveolar and plosive. We'll add to that funny looking long snake under the post-alveolar fricative, and that gives us our ch sound. Okay, so we will not see that symbol on the International Phonetic Alphabet. We create it to make that sound in English. And we'll also see the D sound under plosive alveolar as well, combined with that funny looking Z under fricative post-alveolar to make the ch sound as in judge. If you were to download the International Phonetic Alphabet chart, you will see this. You'll see the non-pulmonic consonants. You'll see the vowel sounds. You'll also see something called other symbols. And under the other symbols, you'll see what looks like a W and an upside down W, and we will include those two sounds as well. So what I want you to be mindful of, all that being said, the most important thing to remember that you'll see is that most of the consonant sounds in English are pulmonic. Other than the W sounds, they're pulmonic. They're breathy. We need air, okay? The other thing you need to notice is that they can be voiced or voiceless, okay? All this other stuff, don't worry about it. Watch the mouth as I'm pronouncing these words. Watch yourself pronouncing these words. Watch others pronouncing these words, and that will help you with mouth movement. It'll become very natural after a period of time. At first, making these movements feels very awkward, and it can make you a little self-conscious. Please don't allow that self-consciousness to stop you from practicing, and the more you practice, the better you're going to be able to be at pronouncing these words, and most importantly, we need you to recognize the sounds. So again, we've downloaded this chart. It looks like this. I can't get it all into the screen, but the top of it, you'll see the pulmonic consonants. You'll see, hopefully, the consonants that are non-pulmonic. You'll see the vowel sounds and the other symbols down here. You'll see it says other symbols. You will find the W and the upside down W. Okay? And not to worry about anything else on that chart other than those things. Now we're going to move on to the different phonemes, okay? The 26 phonemes. We're taking them out of the IPA chart. We're just going to try to reinforce them in our minds a little bit more in a way that hopefully makes a little bit more sense. So we're going to start of the 26. We're going to start with very common ones. The first one is the P sound, which is unvoiced. The B is voiced. So we see the B, closed lips, stop the airflow, releasing it through the mouth, and it's heard in words like pet, happy, jump. So pet, happy, jump. When we say the B, which is voiced, we close our lips to stop the airflow. B, b, b. You see me closing my lips. And we release it slowly through the mouth. It's heard in words like bat, hobby, herb. Bat, hobby, herd. I can feel the vibration. When I say, then we see the two other phonemes, very common consonant phonemes. T, which is unvoiced. T, not hearing any vibration. The tongue tip is touching the ridge behind the teeth. It stops the airflow and releases it through the mouth. Now these are all pulmonic sounds, so we're needing that breath of air in order to make these sounds. It's heard in table, little, watched. D, 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 voiced. Tongue tip is touching the ridge behind the teeth. It stops the airflow as well and releases it through the mouth. And it's heard in dog, at it, play. Now place your hand over here lightly and see if you can feel that vibration in dog, dog, at it. You should feel a slight vibration. Moving on to some more consonant phonemes. So the first one, the first column you'll see is what looks like the letter T and a funny looking S, the snake. And this is an unvoiced consonant sound, and it makes the sound ch. It's actually a very common digraph, and we'll learn more about digraphs in the upcoming chapters. But it makes a ch sound. We have two consonant sounds coming together to make a ch sound. But we are using two sounds, a T and an S, to make this phoneme, okay? It starts with air. Again, these are all pulmonic, mostly, right? So it starts with air. We have an air stop, and then we move to release the air. It's heard in church. We see the sound at the beginning of church and at the end of church, and we also see it in picture. So it's a ch sound. The next phoneme we're seeing represented by a D-looking character followed by a funny-looking cursive Z character. And this is voiced, meaning that we will hear that vibration or feel that vibration on our hands should we place our hand over that part of the larynx. And this is a j sound, j, but it's a very special j. It's not just j, it's j. Starts with air stop and moves to air release. So we have an air stop followed by an air release, and we're not going to get into the technicality of those. I probably couldn't if I wanted to. It's heard in jam, hear that jam. It's heard in danger, danger. It's heard in judge, and it's heard in jump. Okay, so that is a j sound. Then we move to what looks like the letter K. It's unvoiced. The back of tongue is hitting the back of the throat, and it stops the airflow, releasing it through the mouth. And again, not getting too concerned with that. I'm just showing you how it's done. And it's heard in key, car, and luck. So it's a k sound. K, k, k. Now we move on to the j sound. J, j. And it's a voice sound. Again, we're feeling the vibration. The back of the tongue is hitting the back of the throat and stops the airflow, releasing it through the mouth. So you're seeing the same sound movements for the K and the J, the K and the J. It's heard in green, bug, league. Very good. So we're moving on to some more consonant phonemes. So we're looking at what looks like the letter F. it's unvoiced, and this is the sound. Top teeth are on the lower lip, continuous airflow with friction. It's heard in the word fire, laugh, phone. So some friction in that sound. And now it's often confused when we're learning English for the first time with this sound, the V sound. So the V sound, we see a letter V as our character. This is voice, so we're getting some vibration here with the vocal cords. Top teeth are on the lower lip. It's continuous airflow with friction, and it's heard in words like video, move, and of. Now, of and off, O-F-F, which is, they mean totally different things, but the off is the F, the V, the F, what we same thing as fire and laugh and phone sound at the end of the word, and the of is the V sound at the end of the word. So they can get a little confusing, and we will look at those more in detail later on, so don't get too hung up in that. Now we're going to see what's known as a digraph is the same as we probably saw when we did the ch. When we put two sounds together to form one phoneme, that's called a digraph, and we'll learn all about digraphs later on, but we see the TH digraph here, the digraph. The first symbol, phonetic symbol we're looking at is like an oval with a hyphen across it. This is unvoiced. The tongue, both movements will be the same for both likely, and maybe some difference in the second one. Tongue tip peeking out between space and teeth, continuous airflow with friction. So a lot of this, if I say thing, my tongue tip is peeking out, right? Healthy, truthful, truthful. So you're seeing that tongue sticking out, and that's the sound. Now that the sound can be a little bit softer or higher pitched trills when we say it in words like these, other, and smooth. It's a bit of a different sound, and you'll see that we're using another symbol for that, and that's a little O with what looks like a funny looking hat on top of it. I don't know how else to describe it. So that's the other symbol that we'll see for that variation of that sound. Moving on with some more consonant phonemes, you'll see in the first column what looks like the letter S. And again, we haven't even discussed our letters yes, but still a lot of these will look like the letters that they sound like. It's an unvoiced, and it's that S. S. Tongue tip is very close to the alveolar ridge, but not stopping air. Friction sound is made. So you're hearing the friction. When this says there's a friction, you're actually hearing like a hissing sound. And that's the friction we're hearing. It's heard in see, scent, notice. Okay, so that's that first phoneme, this phoneme. Then we're going to hear a z. It's a little bit different than it's a z, like a buzz. If you think of a bee buzzing, z, that's the sound we're hearing, and it's represented by the letter said. Tongue tip is very close to alveolar ridge again, but not stopping air. Friction sound is made, so we're still hearing a friction sound, but it's different than the previous sound, okay? So we're hearing this in zebra. And in Canada, zebra is very, very confusing because in the States and in Britain, they say zebra, but we say said as the last letter of our Roman alphabet in Canada, so it should really be zebra. But anyway, cozy, you hear the cozy. Hear the has, so you should hear almost that buzzing sound when we say those sounds in those particular words. Then we have that funny looking S all by itself. We've seen it with the ch sound and with the T, but now we just have the funny looking S, and that makes the sh sound, which is another digraph, okay? And digraph is two sound. It's two letters coming together to make one sound. Tongue rolling, so back of tongue is between the ridge and palate, continuous flow with a friction sound, so it's heard in ship, nation, special. So try to pronounce those as I'm pronouncing those. I should probably give you a little bit more space to do so. Then we have that funny looking cursive said. This is voiced again. We're here feeling the vibration. And this is the same SH combination, but it has a different sound, okay? Tongue rolling, so back of tongue between ridge and palate, continued flow with a friction sound. We're still hearing somewhat of a friction sound. But I want you to listen to vision. Vision as opposed to ship. See? The ship is very short sound. This has almost like a continuous thing to it. Vision. Okay. Visual. Visual. And leisure. Leisure. So we see an extension of that sound in the second with the funny looking cursive said. Moving on, we're getting to what looks the symbol, the phonetic symbol. Again, these are not the letters of the alphabet. These are just the phonetic symbols. And sometimes they will be the same as the letters of the alphabet, okay? We see what looks like an M. It's voiced. Lips, so we're feeling the vibration in all of these four columns. Lips are closed to stop the air, but sound comes through the nose. So it's a very nasal type of sound because we're closing the mouth and we're feeling the noise. So let's try that. You'll hear it in man, 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 mummy, hem. So it sounds kind of like a nasal sound. Within the next sound, the next phoneme, where it's represented by the phonetic symbol that looks like the letter N. It's also voiced. Tongue tip is on the bony ridge behind the teeth. So if you lick your tongue up, there's a bony ridge there. Continuous flow of air and sound through nose. So we're hearing somewhat like the sound previously, but it's a sound, okay? So it's no, no. Funny, funny, not, not. Then for the next column, you see what looks like, for the phonetic symbol, what looks like the letter N, but we have a little J going inwards towards the center of the N. The back of the tongue is touching the back of the mouth. Airflow is through the nose. And this is a little different than the N in no, that sound. This is going to be like sing, sing, think. Then watch, even the mouth is different. Hungry, hungry. So there's a little bit more tightness in the mouth as well as for these sounds. Note if before a G, the G will be silent. So we're not hearing the G, say for hungry. We're hearing hungry. We are hearing the G. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, I'll look into that later on. Then you'll see the symbol, the phonetic symbol that looks like the letter J. It's voiced as well. Often Y. So this J and Y are going to be used interchangeably to make this yes sound. Yes sound. Okay. The body of the tongue is resting near the palate and air slides through continuously. It's heard in yellow, young, yes, onion, view. So try to say those sounds as we move along. And again, these are just, I'm not going to go into detail with the pronunciation. I want you to use your IPA guide and take your time practicing these sounds. You can go back and pause and listen and repeat on this video as much as you like. That's great. But if you really want the expert sounding, you would be going through the IPA. So we're moving on, and we're continuing. Lately, as you see, we're looking at phonetic symbols that are very much like the graphemes that we use in the Latin alphabet. But we're still focusing on phonetic symbols. We're just listening for the sound. We're not using these as graphemes or letters that we're writing with. So you see what looks like an lowercase L, it too is voiced. So we're hearing that, feeling that vibration. The tongue tip is on the back of the ridge behind the teeth, and we have a liquid flow of air. So I want you to just pretend you're practicing, you're singing, la, 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 la. That's what we're hearing with the L sound, okay? So it's heard in like, watch my mouth, like, silly, silly, feel, feel. So just, I'm trying to listen for that sound, sound. Then we're moving on to what looks like an R in the Latin alphabet. This is a sound. And you're rolling of the tongue. Sides of tongues bunch up to touch back of the teeth, curl towards the back, liquid flow of air. So we're hearing this in red, red, berry, berry. Then we're looking at what might be confused with the grapheme W, but it is W sound. W, 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 W. Rounding of the lips, air glides through. W, W. Heard in win, where, and one. Moving on to what looks like an H in the Latin alphabet. This is unvoiced. This is a h, h sound. Ha, ha, ha. Creating friction at the glottal area. So we hear this in hat, hat, house, house, who. Now, these sounds are very controversial if we're actually hearing them in English, and I think I've explained why we might be hearing them in some forms of Canadian English. You'll see what looks like a backwards question mark. This is voiceless. It's just called a glottal stop. Air escapes through mouth only. So a lot of times when we hear this, especially in slang, when we're not pronouncing all the sounds we're hearing in our word and we seem to be skipping over them, and you'll definitely hear that in this the Atlantic Canada dialect if you're in Atlantic Canada. So we might say certain. Instead of saying certain, we're dropping the D. Certain. Mountain, mountain, mountain. We're forgetting the T. Written, written, written. We're not really pronouncing the T. Oh is another form. So whether or not you'll hear this or not, I don't want you to get too concerned about it, but I'm giving you the sound anyway, just in case. The next symbol, phonetic symbol, looks like an upside down W, and that's whoo sound. Ooh. Voiceless velar glide, part back of tongue raised towards soft palate and rounded, heard in which, white, whales. And again, they may or may not be heard. But that's it for the consonant sounds from my understanding, and I know I went through that pretty fast. I want you to depend more on your IPA guides than on my pronunciation. So we're going to put it all together now, and we're going to look at something called phonetic notations. I can't stress enough, even though some of these phonetic symbols look like letters of the Latin alphabet that we use in English, these are phonetic symbols we're dealing with for this chapter and the following chapter on phonological awareness. We will definitely get into the graphemes and the letters of the alphabet in chapter 5. But for now, I just want you to focus on putting it all together, the phonetic notation. So what might you see and where might you see it when we're talking about the sounds in words? We are not concerned about graphemes, and only the alphabet we are concerned about is the phonetic alphabet. It's all about the sound. When we represent the sounds, we are writing for pronunciation purposes. We are using what's called a phonetic notation. You will find this at the top of your dictionary page. So if you want to pronounce a word through sight by looking at the sound symbols, if you go to any dictionary page and look at the top, they will offer a phonetic notation to help you with pronunciation. And though this page isn't really clear on this, you will see where the phonetic notations are. If we go up to the very first word on this page where it says phonetic, you'll see between two slashes several of those symbols that we went over to help us with our pronunciation. So these phonetic notations usually come right after the word, okay, in most dictionaries. And you'll see there's one for phonetic alphabet, there's a notation for phonetics, there's a notation for phony, and there's a notation for phono. In the first four, all of them that we see that the symbol we're seeing looks like that F, and it's not the letter F we're referring to, it's a phonetic symbol F for that f sound. So, and as we go on, we'll see more. But I just wanted to show you where you will find those on a dictionary page. So once you become very familiar with your phonetic notations, it can help you with pronunciation when you come across a new word you're not sure about. The phonetic notation should be included prior to your definition of the word in a dictionary. So I'm taking that word phonetic from that same dictionary, we're breaking it down a little bit more. So you'll see the phonetic. They might have broken it up into syllables, which is those word parts and word rooms that contain a vowel sound. And we'll talk about syllables later on when we do phonological awareness. But for now, that's what you see in that broken up into syllables. And underneath it, you have your phonetic notation. That's that which is highlighted there. You see the two slashes. You see for every sound we're hearing, every phoneme in that word will have a phonetic symbol. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sounds that we're hearing in the word phonetics. Okay, so every part of that word is pronounced with a symbol or represented by a phonetic symbol for pronunciation purposes. Not to get worried about that little, looks like an apostrophe in between. It's the symbol for stress, which syllable is getting the most stress, and we'll talk about that later on as well. So the notation usually comes right after the word. Whether the word is broken up into syllables or not is irrelevant for this part. And you will usually see it between two slashes, okay? So you should see a representation for every sound you need to pronounce in that word. So again, I'm using this word from the Cambridge Online Dictionary. So we see the F sound, which is F. We see that schwa E. Now, because the stress is placed on, so that symbol usually begins the stress on the next syllable. So we're just going to, that it's actually schwa, so it's not a lot of pronunciation. So it's F, 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 F. Then we see the N sound, ed. Phonetic. Okay, we see the ick, the I, what looks like an I and a K, which are phonetic symbols making the ick sound. So it's phonetic, phonetic from that pronunciation guide. Now, the Cambridge Online Dictionary, when we used the word phonetic in the previous slide, was British, because Cambridge, we're quite aware that it's British in its spelling and pronunciation. And the Merriam-Webster will offer you both the UK version and the US version. And I'm showing you this only so you can see how sometimes those phonetic symbols will differ, as will the pronunciation of the word. Remember, I was telling you that the pronunciation of English in America may be different than it is in Britain, just so you see why and how. And it's represented differently with the phonetic symbols. Not going to get too hung up on this other for the word banana, but I just want you to see that change and why they may be different. Do not get too concerned about these differences, though. They're not enough to make learning English impossible. Like I just have to listen to Canadian English. I can't listen to anything else. No, it doesn't even matter what country you're in. This is going to be beneficial to you regardless of what type of English you're learning. What you're learning here through these PowerPoints and through my book will be beneficial for anyone learning English as a new language, regardless of where and how they're learning it. But I just want to show you so you are aware that sometimes there are these subtle differences in pronunciation and representation of those sounds from the words that we're seeing. Okay? So there you go. We've just finished phonemic awareness for what we need to know about our phonemes and vowel sounds and consonant sounds. And we did a little bit on phonetic notation. I do not want you to be overly concerned with all this, and I definitely do not want you to worry and figure, oh my gosh, I have to know every sound, I have to know every letter. It's good to know, it will be beneficial for you to know, and by all means practice it. But we're not looking for perfection here in any of the learning we're doing, and definitely not in this chapter on phonemic awareness. The most important thing for you to do is learn to recognize the different sounds, okay? And to attempt to practice them in the words that you are seeing. Try not to get too worried about this. Pronunciation comes after years. It doesn't matter how long you've been speaking English. People still who've been speaking English all their lives have difficulty pronouncing some words, okay? And not very many English speakers are aware of phonetic notation and how to use it. So I'm giving this to you as an added thing that may help you with your learning English, but I do not expect you to be an expert at any of this. Just be aware of the different sounds that we're hearing in English, those 44, possibly 48 phonemes that are out there. Try to distinguish between them and practice, practice, practice. We practice best by listening to speakers, as many speakers that we can hear. We watch the mouths of the speakers, and then we watch ourselves pronouncing these words, watching our own mouth movements. I am not a linguistic expert. I am not a speech pathologist, so I cannot help with speaking or pronunciation other than the brief introduction that I've given you in this PowerPoint and in my book. Please download that IPA chart. Please have the access to the IPA with sounds. These will help you more than I can ever help you. And thank you again for joining me for another presentation. In the upcoming presentation, we're going to do a review, an overview and review of everything we've learned in Chapter 3 of All About the Sound, Making Learning English Easier with the 3P approach, by doing some question and answering so that you can challenge that wonderful mind of yours and help with your speaking and recognition of phonemes. Thanks again for joining me. We'll see you next time.